Committee meeting. So we'll get started. Welcome to the October 17th Economic Development and Tourism Committee meeting. Thank you for everybody being here. Our first topic today is a discussion. We're going to have Beth present from Visit Kitsap with what she's got brewing to help us grow our tourism here in Port Orchard. So take it away, Beth.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to all of you for having me. I think I tried to attend a meeting a month or two ago, but it may have been postponed or canceled. But it's always good to be here to share information on the industry with you and what's happening in Kitsap County and how we are approaching promoting tourism. We recently attended a conference. State of Washington hosted their first state tourism conference in 11 years. Some of you may know if you're have your finger on the pulse of that. The state lost its funding for tourism support 11 or 12 years ago. So we remained without an office to sort of spearhead tourism in the state of Washington. And it does have an effect. It does have a huge effect on how people in the business and the trade perceive Washington State as a visitor destination. We automatically just sort of think people come, but there really is a marketing effort behind it, and it's important to recognize that. So we're really excited to see everybody gathering for the conference to talk about a lot of things. There was also an outdoor summit that was on the tail end of the conference that I attended, and so some of the content, mainly, obviously, the economy is very important to everyone, top of mind, who's traveling, who's peeling back on travel. I've also recently heard that almost $500 is required by a family now versus last year. So $500 more to pay bills, to have that quality of life is not the same as it was a year ago this quarter. And so where are people cutting back? What are they cutting back on? And it seems it's more appliances, things that they devoted a lot of attention to during the pandemic, household, improvements, those types of things. But travel seems to continue to be important to people. And they're not willing to give it up. Of course, we're going into holiday season, so we'll see if spending gets cut back a little bit. Some of the other content that was discussed is how people are booking, how they're finding destinations. Of course, social media remains for Gen Z and millennials the number one way for people to find out about destinations. And then, of course, for Gen Xers and Boomers, it's also social media, but there's also a strong friends and family word of mouth component. So more content. TikTok obviously is huge for the Gen Z and millennial market. Booking online, you can now book your hotel through Instagram, through other platforms. How is tourism and visitation considered a community shared value? How are communities partnering with other organizations to create that shared value? Also, we talked a lot about PR, media. We've really been involved in a lot of that, more so this year than I think in the past. I can only speak for the last 16 to 18 months, but we've definitely reached out. We've had more engagement from the State of Washington Tourism Office on leads for travel and media coming to Kitsap Peninsula and Kitsap County. Short-term rental market is quite prevalent. It's somewhat divisive in a lot of communities, communities like Chelan, and others that are very tourism based, with also a heavy population, retired population, and second home and third home ownership. DEI, of course, and then planning for overused parks and trails, primarily with the national parks. All of those trails and places that people found during the pandemic that were just really in some ways decimated from overuse. And I think planners are really trying to struggle with how to balance that with gated, ticketed entry to national parks now is not unheard of. So I do on the heel of that want to mention that the state has launched new app for tourism for trails all over the entire state of Washington. It's called Tread. I've downloaded it. I've used it. It is spearheaded by the state of Washington Tourism Office. It is funded right now by some counties in the state of Washington, not all. We're trying to work to get Kitsap County on board to help fund. Funding is always limited in some of these types of things, but the content is provided by Craig Romano, and Craig Romano wrote the Kitsap Urban Trails edition, several editions of Kitsap Urban Trails books. So there is definitely somebody who knows the area, has probably hiked every trail in the state of Washington behind this, working with the state. If I can share my screen, let's see. So I want to just show you, let's see if I can expand here. Hold on one second. I always have trouble with this. I don't know why. Does anybody have any questions while I dig through here and try and get this launched? No? No questions? Okay, well, we'll just go here.
Beth, how do you spell the name of the app that you mentioned, Tread? I'm not seeing it under TREAD or TED.
It's TREAD. And I have it on one of my phones. And let's see if I can find it.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Tread map.
Tread map, yeah. So it's, yeah. So this is kind of what it looks like when you launch it. And you can download it. And so the purpose of it is it's a user-generated app so that you can, so people, it's really designed to help like planning, parks and rec, facilities, services, anybody who's involved in trail maintenance, trash, all, unwanted activity, all of those things that sometimes municipalities, counties, they can't always respond right away to issues of, overcrowding, the trash cans overflowing, there's a gate, people are going off trail, using trails that weren't meant to be used for a number of reasons. So it's kind of designed for that, so that it's immediate. It's just like your Waze for trails. Which we use Waze for, trying to get around town and using that for direction, GPS. This is a way for people to really respond to areas that need attention, or they can share things like, for example, if you're going to a park and the parking lot's full, where else can you park? Or can we direct people to a place that maybe doesn't get as much visitation as maybe some of the more popular routes? And again, I think the primary purpose of this came out of the pandemic, and those national parks and other really high traveled areas. Doesn't mean it wouldn't affect us, but I think it's worth checking out. I'm going to try one more time to get my let's see here. Okay. Can we see this? Everyone see that?
Yep.
There
Okay.
you go,
So
yeah.
I just want to draw your attention to the tab. It says Paulsbo LTAC. This is not the Paulsbo LTAC presentation. I have tried to change the file name on this 5 times and it did not work. I assure you, this is not Paulsbo. This is Port Orchard. And it's really exciting to see some of the activity that we've been working on. Of course, we work with Serotonin for creative design and for posts, social media posts. So these are some examples of the social media features. Of course, the wall has slipped in here a couple of times, but these are some of the examples of the posts. So you see representation on local business, on events, the Lady Washington, the Port Orchard Night Market. So there's all kinds of things that are covered in our social media posts. We have a social media tracker. So if you wanted to know how many times Port Orchard was featured in social media, whether Instagram or Facebook, and those are currently the only 2 social media platforms we are on. we would be able to, show you, what dates, what the businesses were. Usually I have it in front of me. Today I don't, but I'm happy to share how many times. We have almost 50 to 70 businesses in Port Orchard that are featured on our website. I will say the website will be getting an overhaul next year. We've just run out of space on the server. It was in its time, it was a great site, but it's time to, overhaul. So we're going to tackle that next year. And I'm excited about that project for a number of reasons. You can see here, there's some other imagery, and we welcome imagery. If you have imagery that you feel we should, be aware of or alerted to, please let us know. Some of the imagery on the right, this is what was used in your LTAC Datafy mobile campaign. Some of these images were used. And I'm going to show you the results of those campaigns, and they're ongoing right now. We also use some of this imagery for the Port of Seattle. We have a digital board at the airport that we applied for a grant. I do want to say I've applied on behalf of Visit Kitsap for 21 grants, in whether they're lodging tax fund, grant applications, project-based, in the last year and a half. That's a considerable amount of applying, reporting, monitoring. So there's a lot of effort that goes into looking for project-based grants to help us fund the activities of Visit Kitsap. This particular screen where it shows attribution, this is the campaign that we have with the City of Port Orchard through one of our LTAC funds that we have invested only at this point at $15,000. We've only invested $5,000. And we're just continuing to monitor how the success of this campaign is working, and if we need to shift and maybe reinvest the remainder in another type of marketing. This is over 50 miles, over 900 unique devices, and 130,000 roughly estimated revenue on this campaign. Now remember, this is over 50 miles, specifically dedicated to the over 50 mile segment, specifically because that's what's indicated in the RCW. But when we go to the next screen, I want to show you the attribution of over 1 mile. And obviously 10,000 devices observed in market after seeing the ad, almost $7 million in estimated revenue to the City of Port Orchard for a $5,000 investment. That's pretty substantial. The reason I want to show you both is because obviously the over 50 miles part of the RCW, but to show the effectiveness of what we're doing on behalf of the city, then we can show you the over 1 mile. And that this revenue number is, it's not exact, it's an estimate. And how the company that we contract with comes up with that number is they take our reports on hotel occupancy as well as short-term rental occupancy, and then they pull credit card data from MasterCard, and they merge all of this data along with the Department of Commerce reports, and they come up with an average spend for hotel stays and also for just things like coffee or lunch or something like that. So that's how that number is arrived at. It's not an exact science. We're not saying it's like for sure, but just that's the estimate. So that's a significant amount of investment in the community for little investment that you made in lodging tax that we've put that we've shown. And then this next slide.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
So you've spent 5,000 to generate these statistics with 10,000 remaining. Is that what I heard you say?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we haven't billed for any project management, so any of the work that goes on behind the scenes to actually activate these campaigns, we haven't invested any. We haven't billed the city for any of that. It's only been strictly against the campaign itself. So we've kind of done it as a courtesy, and happy to do it. I think we get excited about seeing like hard numbers. This next slide is what we're working towards in 2023. So currently we work with a company called Datafy. We'll probably continue to work with them. And this is a new, what we call business intelligence. It's kind of above my pay grade, honestly, but it's fascinating because there's actually a geofence heat map component to this new type of data where we can actually see people moving through the city of Port Orchard. We can see where they come from. We can see, where they're going versus just getting the list of zip codes and the DMA information. Now we can actually see the actual movement of people through the county, which is kind of impressive. A lot of cities who would use this, primarily this type of technology was born out of communities that wanted to know sort of what the ratio of visitors to residents are at events. So a lot of times what you'll see when you think that there's just a preponderance of one or the other, you'll see a good healthy mix of both residents and visitors enjoying local amenities. They can also pull from multiple credit card data sources versus just one. And again, a lot of this has been utilized with a lot of cities that really have tried to manage their tourism. You're seeing a lot of international cities that are having challenges, Venice's, those types of things. But I think this can also help us with the Canadian market, which is kind of exciting, because I believe that we can get Canadian data as well. So this is something new for 2023. I do have more up-to-date hotel occupancy data. This is countywide. We don't get specific citywide data on this particular report. The hotels do. So your flag hotels, your chain hotels will get a report that says exactly how they are performing in the marketplace. This is a countywide average, and it's upwards of, so you can see in July of 2022, that's the occupancy countywide in hotels, and the average daily rate for hotels countywide is $142.86, and it's actually it's about that in the month of August as well. And I do have some more recent reports. This one just got in there because it's kind of a semi-annual report. And then the final number, 121, is how much money, it's called the average. You have the occupancy, you have average daily rate, and you have revenue per available room. So how much money was basically, as I understand it, made off of selling a room. Does that make sense? It's kind of complicated.
So what's the gray? What's the gray line versus the white line?
You know what, I this was I think this is last year. This is over last year. So this gray line would be 2021. So you see a change, like, so in June, you see a negative 1.1 change. This is where you were last year in 2021 versus where you are in 2022. So 3.4% change in occupancy, 9.3% change in average daily rate. And then it looks like the average, the APR, the average revenue per RevPAR, revenue per available room is much more this year than it was last year. So these are good trends right here for the hotel community. And again, countywide, this is, and so how do they get to this? So all of the hotels that have either a franchise, a corporate, a flag, they all report to a company called Smith Travel Research, also called STR, which is kind of confusing because we now have STR for short-term rentals. But they all report, they all pay into the reporting to get this data, and they all get this report back every month. So we just get the larger view of how the county is performing, but each hotel that reports into this, so there would be probably 2, maybe 3 in the city of Port Orchard that would get this report. And I would guess that this number is probably a little bit lower in Port Orchard because this is an average of 142. So yeah, again, you'll see the year-to-date running 12 months. It's a great question about what that gray line is. So there's definitely a difference, and it's trending up. So
Beth, you don't have that information specifically to each city and or area of the county?
I could get it. We could get it. We'd have to pay for it. Yeah, it's expensive for us to pay for each communities, but it's available if we want it. And what they do, basically, hotels use it to, I don't know if we have any hotels on the call, and they might be able to explain it better than I can, but they're using it to determine what they call their comp set. So they'll get a report of hotels that are like them. So you have, budget hotels, you have limited service, you have, more of a boutique style, than you have luxury, right? So you have all these different classifications, and each one is compared to another one in their marketplace. So here, maybe they're comparing what the rate is in Tacoma or in another like market or another like property within the county. And so the hotels have always been very report driven. Have always been very data driven.
Do they happen to have pre-COVID numbers?
Yeah, we have only subscribed since I started, but we can actually look at that through our Datafy database. But we can also see if they have data. I would say that everything is definitely not from a workforce perspective, but certainly from occupancy and the daily rate perspective, everything is well past 2019. And 2019 is really the benchmark for most of the industry because it's the highest and best it's ever been, right? Everybody was just, the trajectory was really good. And then of course we hit COVID, but then you have that rebound effect of people wanting to get out and they wanted to stay. And that's kind of where the short-term rental situation comes into play. And we're just here to provide the information. So it's sort of up to you as a group and a city to determine how that fits into your tourism plan and your travel, your plans for people traveling. But what I think is really interesting, and I've been saying this for as long as I've been here, which hasn't been that long, the short-term rental market is growing. It has tripled in Kitsap County in 3 years. It's going to continue to grow. It is somewhat divisive at times for communities. But I think what's important, this is definitely a Port Orchard. This is what's called a market minder. And we subscribe to a service that does provide us with individual cities information on short-term rentals. So that's the difference between the two. And they're not the same company that we get this information from. It's a different company. They pull it from, if you can see down at the bottom left-hand corner, Airbnb and VRBO. This kind of thing wasn't around 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It wasn't available. And so this goes to show how important this component of lodging in travel has become. Each city, we can see on this market minder exactly this geofence of, the area of Port Orchard, Manchester, Southworth, this South County, where all those purple dots are, or where they've identified a short-term rental in the market. The average daily rate for a short-term rental in February is $189. In August, it was $266. It's well above a hotel average daily rate. It's well above the hotel's, it's just below the hotel's occupancy rate for August. But what this market minder also does, and it's provided to real estate investment developers to show people if they're interested in building or adding, what the rental demand is, what the potential for growth is. And I would say here in the state of Washington, at least in the Puget Sound area, it continues to go up, and Kitsap is a prime market for that. But we don't have as many available. We just don't have as much, housing for people to convert. So, I don't know if the trajectory is going to continue to be 100 more added every year, but that's a significant amount. And they should be paying lodging tax. So that's also something else to consider.
Can you go back a slide real quick?
Sure.
I just picked up on something.
I could if my computer would work. Let's see here. Well, I don't know why I can't, but all of a sudden I cannot get back there. Trying to think what that slide was.
It just was the year over year data with occupancy rates and APR and RevPAR.
Well, it must be working. Something's working. There we go.
So 2020, I would think if that gray line was last year, then we would see 2020, 21. Yeah, it's not, I don't think it is. I think that gray line's something else, because if we're seeing 3-year trends, then the number should carry, right?
Yeah, it could be. I don't have the full report in front of me, but usually the one, but I mean, I think you can see year to date, you can see the difference year over year, right? So let's
Yeah,
say this
It would
is,
just be interesting to see it for Port Orchard, because when
Yeah.
you get into RevPAR, right, we have limited service hotels, so I think this is probably skewed. So it'd be interesting to see a report just for Port Orchard.
yeah. And again, I mean, I'm happy to find out how much that would cost to get it. I mean, some of the hotels might be willing to share it with you sort of offline. It's kind of proprietary, so they're not really allowed, we're not really allowed to do it. But because we quote Smith Travel Research and we say that that's our partner, I think workforce housing and how hotels are being used for workforce housing would be of interest to you as well.
Sure.
Because I know that that's happening in several markets here because of the lack of housing.
Definitely happening in Port
Yep.
Orchard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Happening
I used to manage the bank next door to the hotel out on the highway. And that was a good portion of their business. And I think it's some of the business at our downtown hotel.
Yeah, and it does affect your lodging tax if they're staying monthly. So they would be exempt after a certain amount of days.
Hmm.
So after, I want to say it's 30 days, but it might be 28. If they're staying long-term, they are exempt from lodging tax.
I don't know that that's happening 30 days, but it is there are continually contractors going in out of, I think it's the Red Lion now, it's what they're branded out. Because our lodging tax is growing, we're not seeing a negative trend on that.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good news. Yeah, so basically just here to sort of present what the scenario is and hopefully give you the information and the resources that you want. So here again, this is short-term rental. So where you had RevPAR for hotels, now you're seeing what the RevPAR for a short-term rental is, when their best month is, what their weekend RevPAR is, and then how far, how they were booked. These are all super technical. I don't follow that much in detail. It's available. We pay for it. So I took a screenshot of it. But here you can see how far out they're booking now. So here are the book listings for Port Orchard from October all the way through April of next year. And hotels generally use these. Our part-time short-term rental, experts, they're professionals now. They're doing revenue management. They're trying to figure out how to make the most of their investment. It's completely, it's changed the game. It's been around for a while, but these types of reporting, this is relatively new. So yeah, you can see how far into January they're booked.
And this was based on 100 rentals. Is that what you said? In the geofence area?
You know what? I have another, I have the list. I can actually see, not necessarily the addresses, but where they're located. So there is another report that I could probably glean for you that I don't have today that sort of shows, like this will show sort of the number. I don't know that there's 100 here. I know there's over 600 in the county.
You use the 110 number earlier in your presentation. So yeah, Sean, I think that's what you were looking at.
Yeah, I'm just curious in our South Kitsap, this geofence right here, how many subject properties are in that?
Yeah, if I use that number, I'm not certain why I did, because I don't know the exact number of short-term rentals in Port Orchard. I know there's the Market Minder, which is sort of the visual, overall visual of where they could be within the marketplace. And then we get a report that shows how many of them are one bedroom, how many of them are a private room, how many of them are whole house, and how they price. So a private room might be, less than a whole house, right? So you might want to rent a private room versus renting a whole house. A private room might be $79, whereas a whole house might be $369. So we do have that report. That report would be helpful for the hotels so that they can see if they have a larger suite in their hotel or they have a one bedroom, what the cost of a one bedroom in a hotel would be compared to a one room in a house in an Airbnb. I utilize these reports for circumstances like this to try and sort of show what's going on in the marketplace. I don't rely on them definitively. It's not the be all end all in terms of the health of the market. It's a component of what we do and how we can show people trends in the marketplace. But I think for your purposes, if you're wanting to collect lodging tax, or you're not sure if you're collecting lodging tax, or you're concerned about ADUs or short-term rentals in your marketplace. Sorry, my dog is in my house right now. he's eating. If those are things that are coming before you and the council, then that's what these reports are designed to do. Okay.
Well, Beth, I have a question real quick. Do you think this that bookings graph that for the short-term rental market, does that kind of mirror hotel? I mean, do you think that would be the same for them?
I am not, there is a report that is available, and Visit Seattle gets, if anybody gets the reports, Visit Seattle gets all the reports, but it's mostly for the Seattle, King County area. The larger DMOs get those. Especially the ones that have convention centers. They, a large component of their visitor base is based on conventions, right? So we haven't really seen a lot of that lately because of the Washington State Convention Center being under construction, but you're seeing it a lot now. And those types of pacing reports, which is what this is very prevalent with those organizations. With the hotel, it's hard, our market's complicated. We have, in the county, we have 2 hotels. We have a lot of rooms with, both tribes, with both of the casino properties. They are not, they don't collect lodging tax. We have a lot of government per diem. They, do not pay a lot of lodging tax in circumstances. So it kind of complicates, our market, and we don't have as many hotel rooms as a lot of communities. So I think that the hotels definitely get that report, Matt. And I think they are looking at it much, much closer than I would be looking at it.
So is this report available for like all of 22? Because what I'm wondering is what are the true shoulder seasons? Because obviously you can look at the first week or December as pretty slow, but it looks like most of the other months they have a peak of some kind. What was last February like, or what was last March like? Can you go back in time and get this kind of report, a booking report?
I can look and see. We didn't have the market minder back. The only thing that we had was the just the basic report for short-term rental that just shows, if you're just talking about short-term rentals, it just looks just like the hotel report. It just says private room, whole house. What it does show from 2016 or 2018 on is how many have been added to the marketplace. So that is available. Again, this is Visit Kids Up contracts with these companies to provide this information. So it's really important. We appreciate if you're using the information to credit Visit Kids Up and to credit AirDNA or to credit Smith Travel Research or to credit Datafy, because we get these at a considerable cost to the organization. But in terms of being able to provide an industry report that gives you a holistic view of what's happening, I think it's important that we share it with you. But credit is important, and we can go back and get some data prior. But I will tell you that it has, the addition of short-term rentals in the entire marketplace has tripled since 2018. I don't know that it's tripled in Port Orchard. I just know that it's tripled overall. But actually, I do have a report that shows how many are in Port Orchard. And when I get that, I can share it with you. So hopefully that was helpful and not confusing, because sometimes it gets confusing for me. And we only track the county, and we track each city that would have, I mean, the preponderance of short-term rentals is on Bainbridge Island, just FYI, that's where most of them are.
So Beth, do you have the city of Port Orchard set up as an entire POI? It's not split up any more than that?
We don't, not on Datafy. I know you've asked me about that, and we don't. We have it. I can pull up South County. I can pull up Port Orchard, but I know you've asked for some of that information, and I've sent some information over to the council. It is like, I can pull it up and show Port Orchard visitation, and I've submitted that in the past. We have lots of POIs in Port Orchard and South County. There are a number of ways that we can pull data. So what exactly is it that you're interested in?
Well, I mean, if you do have multiple POIs in the city of Port Orchard, and if you could provide a list of those so that we can see, you know, is it the mall? Is it downtown? Is it, where are the people going that are spending all of this money in particular? Is it hotels? Is that where the $150 per person coming from 50 miles or more? Is that where, is it all hotels?
Yeah, so like I said, in the hotel economic attribution, I could pull it back up if you want me to. That attribution is totaled and calculated by a number of factors. The first one is an average of how much a hotel room would cost, and this is countywide, right? So, or for your purposes, it's in the city. So it would be those 3 hotels that you have. How much is an average room cost at the, Red Lion, at the Comfort Inn? And then that average is applied to also state and local tax collection, the state of the Department of Commerce, and they merge that information together to sort of get this estimate of what, if somebody's visiting Port Orchard and they're spending the night in a hotel and they're likely spending some money somewhere in town, what that looks like. So again, not an exact science, an approximate, but what I think we want to show in those slides is that people clicked on our ad that we have for Port Orchard. They showed up in market, and they also were estimated to have spent money in the city of Port Orchard. The other thing that I will say is the new website also has this capability. The new business intelligencer that we're talking about using, this is, for us, it's transformational. You've never really been able to convert business from a website. You can say there's click-throughs, you can say there's impressions, you can say there's time on site, you can say there's bounce rates, you can see where the origin of the market is, are they using mobile, are they using desktop, et cetera, et cetera. And with the new website and the new business intelligence function, we can track if somebody clicks on our website, let's say they click on the City of Port Orchard, Bay Street Bistro, or Peninsula Bevco, or the Farmers Market, any one of those, if they show up in market after clicking on it, it will be considered a conversion, which is, and then we can also apply the spending data, the hotel data to that to get another economic attribution. So our world wasn't like this 10 years ago. We were talking about print ads and certified folder and, maps on the ferry and all those things. And, we have a lot more tools now to be able to show, the importance of, the advertising that we're doing to convert business through the advertising that we're doing, which is not something that we did a long time ago, but I'm actually sort of a fan now that we're able to convert through these very specific digital tools that we have.
Hey, Beth, will this new website, will it allow you and us to see Port Orchard and South Kitsap specific data?
We can get reports. Reports are available. I don't know what they look like specifically, but I know that these companies giving us the reports versus us having to go in and sort of source where things are is very important to me because of our limited capability staff wise. So yeah, we definitely want to show as much countywide activity, North Central, South activity, and then individual community activity as we can.
Thank you.
Any other questions? It's a lot of info.
Yeah, no, I would just say, Beth, just for you, this is great information, but obviously this group here, primarily would really love to drill down into the city of Port Orchard. And so as you continue to, learn these tools, it'd be great to come back with data specific to Port Orchard when you attend this particular forum or our LTAC forum.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just having enough information for you to just sort of see where the industry is headed, but to show you what, I know that we've had a couple appropriations from lodging tax, one for administration of things like social media, being able to put those posts out, creating a social media calendar for the city of Port Orchard and all the events and the businesses, and then maintaining, having them on the website. That's one investment that you made in our organization. And I think we demonstrated that through examples of posts today. Secondly, the data for the campaign. One campaign that we did was with the Ride the Tide, which was an appropriation from lodging tax to help get people on the water trails. We've had a number of people coming to the area, going to the farmers market from that. So that was the second appropriation. And the third one was this particular campaign of 15,000, where we've used 5,000 to show the visitors in market and the economic impact attributable to the campaign. So I hope that we'll continue to look for specific ways to bring you that individual data that you're looking for. Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any additional questions for Beth? Okay, seeing none, I think we'll move on to item number 2 or topic number 2. That's from Mayor Robb in regards to the transportation impact fees.
Well, and it isn't, that's what got listed on there. What I really want to talk about is that Nick and I are looking at, we have a number of challenges, from transportation to getting the redevelopment, the type of activity that we want to see downtown. And I think the housing market's going to shrink a little bit. Nick continues to get phenomenal activity in the apartment sector. But it's more the garden, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, it's the garden apartments. And we want to see downtown mixed use structured parking. And when we talk to developers, our market just isn't quite ripe yet for that type of activity. And, so we want to, I'm just planting a seed here. And we looked at this, but I think the answer is, if there's a possibility we could adjust our traffic impact fee for downtown, because downtown is built out and not, and we're also allowing for less parking downtown because of the pedestrian path, your access to walk to your job at the shipyard, to walk to your job in Seattle. So it would, but our traffic impact fee needs to be defensible. So it's not something that we're going to do tomorrow or talk to the city council, about modifying tomorrow, but likely when we redo or update our traffic, impact fee, in the next few years, that's a conversation we should likely have, and whether or not there's we create a zone for downtown that is different then if we're still not getting the activity that we want downtown, how do we provide an incentive in that area? And that's one of the ideas that Nick got. So that's one idea. And Nick, is there anything more to add to that? I know there was a bunch of research you did.
Yeah, well, I can just give you a little background on the research. One of our city attorneys, Jennifer Robertson, her husband actually is a real estate broker and puts together real estate deals for development sites. And so he did just a pro bono look at the feasibility of developing the 640 Bay Street block downtown. And his takeaway was that, just as the mayor said, we are not ripe for that type of development. The per square footage construction cost is too high relative to the rents that we generate in Port Orchard. And so, the only tools that the city has available, we've already got the multifamily tax exemption in place. The mayor wanted to explore whether it's possible to reduce our connection fees or traffic impact or impact fees in downtown. And the traffic impact fee piece is really the one that's the easiest to adjust, because you can create two separate districts and you would pay a lower fee downtown, but the fee outside of downtown would actually have to go up to offset the fees downtown. And so that's a policy change that we would have to explore and talk about. When you calculate impact fees, you calculate the total cost of all of the projects divided by growth. And none of the projects that we're building are in downtown. All of the projects are located outside of downtown. And so you'd have to look at a new denominator for the areas outside of downtown, and then a denominator for the areas inside of downtown for their share of projects. It's a pretty easy study to prepare, and you could end up with maybe the fee outside of downtown goes up by $500, but downtown it goes down by like $4,000. So that would move the needle in terms of project viability. The other, we've just been looking at other tools, and really the other big tool that the city has is the ability to invest in infrastructure in a way that supports development projects. And we're already doing that with the segment of Bay Street between Frederick and Robert Geiger, where we're looking at replacing water mains and sewer mains, and then also elevating the roadway. But for the rest of downtown, there are other infrastructure challenges that we need to address that I think if you put that on the back of a developer, it kills any project pro forma. And one of those projects is the second lift station downtown over by Bay Ford, which has to be upgraded. But when we look at, the other thing that you could potentially consider is we look at downtown. In our downtown master plan, we identified a whole bunch of waterfront improvement projects. There's a new street between Sydney and Frederick that's like the waterfront street that would lead to the development of the block that Mansour owns. There's a whole list of projects, and you could potentially look at tax increment financing as a way to pay for those things to sort of pave the way for development. And tax increment financing in Washington is a brand new tool from the legislature. We're sort of waiting to see other cities go first and show us how this is done and how what the lessons learned are before we stick our necks out on it. But each city in the state is allowed 2 tax increment finance districts, whereby the 2 things happen. First of all, the 1% annual cap on property tax increase goes away because you're actually trying to harness the increased value of properties resulting from those investments. And so for a period of 15 or 20 years, you would actually see the real increases in value added to the tax rolls as a way to finance the debt that you would issue and how you would pay for projects. And so that is a new tool that is available to us. I just don't think we're quite ready to do that, but it's something we may want to consider going forward. I think you could potentially do a downtown tax increment finance district. And then I think that could also be a tool used to pay for the next phase of Bethel improvements if we don't get more sales tax measures. If the property owners on Bethel were to agree to form this district, Home Depot, Walmart, Fred Meyer, all of these projects, and then the future development sites, the value that's added to them could be used to finance maybe the phase 4 project or the phase 2 project on Bethel.
And Nick and I actually talked about making that district bigger than Bethel and be Bethel and Sedgwick, so that, because we keep asking and asking for the interchange, but beyond the interchange, there's a significant roundabout at Bethel, and Sedgwick. And there's a significant housing project off of Bravo Terrace. There's a roundabout that goes in there. If, we would get the lift from that housing development, the activity on Bethel. And so we're not ready to bring anything forward yet. I think we need to perform on the sales tax measure that we've just put in place. But we're looking at how do we fund that next project? And we've got enough on our plate right now, but we're brainstorming, and we're sharing some of our brainstorming that we're talking about, we're thinking about. Fred?
Yeah, can you go over what you said about the downtown parking? It sounded like we're saying the cost of creating more parking downtown is not justified by the current rental rates.
The
So,
cost of
is that correct?
the last
So-
time we looked at a parking structure, it was 50,000 a stall for per a parking structure, and I bet it's today pushing double that. So when you start building structured parking over the top of a mixed use project that has ground floor retail and housing above it, it doesn't pencil right now in our downtown because of the rents that that we're getting. They are penciling for garden apartments with surface parking, because we're seeing a ton of that. But you add the element of the structured parking underneath to maximum, in downtown, we don't have an area to build a big surface lot. So it's just not those projects aren't penciling. Did that answer your
Yeah,
question?
Partly. I mean, so I think that's a good way to identify the problem that we're having. I'm just wondering, so do we not expect development at this time until the rents are increasing, I guess? Is that what we're saying?
I think it is unrealistic in the short run that rents are going to increase because of economic factors. One, I think we could be heading into some form of economic downturn. And secondly, there doesn't seem to be any short-term resolution to supply chain, the construction costs. So construction costs are going up astronomically, rents are going up, but it doesn't pencil now. And in the short run, I don't see that solving itself. In the long term, it could, probably not in our careers in city government. And so Nick and I are just kicking the tires on what other things could we do to send the type of activity that I believe we want, which is more people living downtown and mixed use, and with that comes the mixed use projects that our master plan envisioned.
Okay, and Rob, you've actually touched on this at different times of sort of redistributing the existing parking that we have downtown. For example, making it more retail as opposed to long-term commuting parking. And we have park and rides in other areas, so we don't need to have people parking downtown who go and work at the shipyard.
And we've got
Should we
Commissioner
accelerate
Anderson
that?
here. What's that? Yeah, well, I mean, it's where we're about to break ground on the Marina Pump Station, which is going to take away some parking in that area. On the heels of that is the Kitsap Bank project, and then the community center. We're in communications with the port. We have a swap going on right now. That parking in front of their office is going away in the short run, and some of it will get replaced with short-term parking down there to support the new uses down there. So that means those liveaboards and the marina patrons are going to need to park on the port's owned and leased property, which is where we're going to lose some of our long-term parking where the commuters are currently parking, because the port has their needs and we need to satisfy, we need we have an ILA with the port right now, swapping parking areas, because it doesn't matter on the waterfront where we put the commuters. And so we're utilizing the port's property and they're utilizing ours. Well, we need our property for these for the projects that are coming. So that means the port's going to need to take their property back. And it's not going to be all of the commuter parking, but we're going to take a bite out of it. Probably, a third is going to go away. When I walk down there, right now, COVID and telework has really changed. And I think commute behavior. And also I think the startup of the Southworth Ferry, somebody that, lives out in McCormick Woods probably isn't coming down to town anymore, when they can drive right out to Southworth and have a faster crossing. So it was a long-winded, hopefully I answered your question.
Hey, Rob, is there any thought to maybe moving the commuter parking entirely off of the waterfront, maybe up the hill a little bit to a lot similar to what they have at Harper Church in the Southworth area?
I don't, I think it's cost prohibitive, Mark, for us to buy. That's what Kitsap Transit does. I think long term we're gonna take bites out of the commuter parking down on our waterfront. One of them's going to happen here in the next 6 to 9 months when we break ground on the Marina Pump Station. Right. And I think that having more open space and park space on our waterfront is more important to me anyway, on our waterfront than parking cars on it. And once Kitsap Transit's 220 stall park and ride lot is open for business, we can have conversations about, how much more parking can we take off the waterfront and use for other purposes. But until that happens, we need to have it, some of it where it's at. But based on the use, the activity and the use I'm seeing right now, I think we can afford to lose, 20 or 30% of it and not impact anybody today.
All right. Anybody else have anything on that topic? Any questions for the mayor?
Well, I was just going to chime in too. The only other thing we could potentially tweak is right now, our downtown mixed use parking standards say there's no parking required for ground floor uses. It's 1 stall per dwelling unit in the multifamily piece. I don't see any developers who believe they can build apartments without providing 1 stall per unit, but you could lower the parking standards downtown just to make it permitted by right rather than making somebody apply for a variance. And at least that changes the math on what is required. But I think that maybe in the future, a 1/2 stall per unit would be the right number, but today it is not the right number based on car ownership and where groceries come from and other things.
Yeah, till we have a grocery store downtown, that's probably not viable.
Does it
7-Eleven doesn't cut it, huh?
Does it make any sense? Does it make any sense to us, instead of incentivizing development by reducing the traffic impact fee downtown, but to dedicate those funds that you would be moving off the downtown area into a parking structure or a parking location near downtown to just like I think it was Fred said that maybe picking up another location or partnering with Kitsap Transit in the same kind of idea. I mean, there's probably a couple locations in the near area that you could still walk to. Transit commuters could still walk to the ferry without taking up, really valuable downtown property.
I've never looked at the question of whether a park and ride facility or a parking structure for commuters would be eligible for traffic impact fees. It's something that you could potentially explore as part of the impact fee calculation, but I'm not sure if that would be a legally permissible use of traffic impact fee funds. We'd have to look into that further. I'm not aware of anybody who's done that.
And being a board member on the Kitsap Transit, everybody has the same challenge that we have and wants more of these park and ride lots. And you got to wait your turn, and we're doing, we did one in Bremerton, and then that one's done. We've done one up in North Kitsap, and the one in Silverdale is under construction now. We're next. And I know that we won't get the one after ours. It'll be, because the other mayors are on the board and the county commissioners are but what about my community? And what about, so, there'll be Kitsap Transit will build another one, but it's like after ours, but it's likely 10 or 12 years out.
Well, and I know just barely enough to be dangerous, but I know Kitsap Transit has to go through an approval process for these park and ride lots.
Mhm.
But if the city is on the front end, the one initiating it by using the impact fees, maybe Kitsap Transit could join in the process without being on the front end.
Yeah, good point. I just know that we will have to wait our turn with any Kitsap Transit dollars.
So Rob, are you considering the facility out off of Ruby Creek area as being ours at this point?
Yeah, they were in mediation last week
Mhm.
they're building that. They've got the funding. They just got to close on the real estate. And they were in mediation last week. I know that.
Okay.
It's coming. It's a couple of years out, but it's coming.
It's too bad we don't allow parking on Port Orchard Boulevard for commuters. I mean, let them walk from there to the Footberry.
Yeah, we've got a grant for the study that road's likely going on a diet, and you're going to see bike lanes using that extra lane that we have on both sides.
Okay, anything else on this topic? If not, let's move ahead to Mr. Bond with a future meeting preference.
Yeah, just I know that some of our council committees have started having hybrid meetings in person and online, and I just wanted to check in with this committee and verify that the preference is for online meetings. I think staff certainly, just because of our telework schedules, we like the virtual option. But if the committee wanted to start having in-person meetings again, we wanted you to have the opportunity to discuss it and chart our course.
I don't know, myself, for the time slot that we have, I think Zoom is the best way. Online is the best way to go for those of us who have jobs and are working. I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, though.
I second that.
Yeah.
The same.
Works
Yeah,
for
I
me.
prefer online.
All right, that works for us.
What
So I
about
do have a question for everybody, though. Do we consider moving these to every 2-month type meeting, or are we good with as it sits? Seems like we've canceled a few of these over the past few months. What's everybody's thoughts of that? Do we stay on the schedule we're on now and cancel them as needed?
Mark, if I may offer, it's easier to cancel a meeting than it is to plan for another one. So that's kind of been the thought process, is we have a set meeting date. And then as the meeting gets closer, a week out or so, staff says we don't have any, topics or not enough topics to have a meeting, and then we cancel it. I think just to have the routine that the meeting is on this day and you reserve that time, is better at least for staff. And then, otherwise I think what will happen is if we go to a less frequent or without a scheduled meeting date, it'll fall through the cracks, would be my thoughts.
Makes sense. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, looks like we've had a good meeting today. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Thank you, Beth, if you're still out there somewhere. But I appreciate everybody coming. Good to see you, Gary.
You.
Jim, we see you all the time. Matt, thanks for joining us. We'll see the rest of you guys tomorrow afternoon. So with that, this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.